Okay, so I recently purchased the ILX-W650 receiver by Alpine. I looked at a lot of different receivers, and for the price point and the features, I found this is really the one that would work best for me. I really wanted to make sure it had Android Auto, Sirius XM, and Bluetooth capability. So it checked all the stats I needed and has a larger screen than most with a very thin profile. It's only about 2.5 inches deep. So there's plenty of room for your wiring and all of your accessories like your Sirius receiver behind it. There's one problem with it, and that's that these require a parking brake safety switch in order for you to go into your settings, to view your videos, to set up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, to change your clock, just about anything. And this is a pretty old vehicle. It's from 2000. Still runs great, still in excellent shape, but it's not easy to access the wiring, and I really didn't want to have to rip apart the wiring harness in order to access it. So I decided to go with the bypass. I ordered a bypass from Amazon, only cost me about 10 bucks, but it's in Illinois and it's going to take about 5 days to get here. I don't want to wait 5 days to set my clock. So I decided to bypass it quickly and easily. There is a long cable coming out of the back of the wiring harness, and it's a yellow cable with a blue stripe. And I'll show you what that looks like real quick. Okay, that's this cable here. And it's pretty long because obviously it's supposed to go to your parking brake. And you can see here on this vehicle, I have a foot parking brake as opposed to a hand brake. What I've done is when I wired in my stereo, I just fed it behind the dash, coming out by the footrest. And there is a quick and easy way to bypass this if you don't want to wire anything up, and that's with your OBDII. Hopefully you guys can see that. And pin number 5 on your OBDII is actually a signal ground. So if you were to just push this right in there, it will bypass it so you can set your clock, or you can change your settings or whatever you need to do. But if you have to access it over and over again, you don't want to keep taking it out, putting it back in, because if you leave it in, that doesn't work. It does have to be interrupted. So let's take a quick look. We're going to start up the vehicle just so we can see what happens when we don't have the parking brake switch activated. Takes about 10 seconds for this to boot up usually. And so it's trying to read the USB card I have in there. And there is some video and audio on there. Mute that. So we can see it will play the audio for my videos, but it says for your safety this function is only available while the vehicle is parked. It's okay, you shouldn't be watching any type of video while you're driving anyway. And if we go back to the home screen and we go into setup, we can see I can't change my volume settings, I can't go into my system information, I can't change my Bluetooth, I can't change my Sirius settings, I can't access my cameras, and I can't go into information. So I really can't do anything. But if I were to take this wire and put it into pin number 5, I didn't have the wire straight enough, so what you got to do is kind of twist it up, make sure it's firm. It wasn't twisted up, so it wasn't feeding in. And again, we can see I can't access anything. And I go to pin number 5, and I just insert it right into pin number 5. There we go. Now I can feel it's connecting. And now I can access my system information. I can adjust my volume settings. I can go into my camera, which isn't hooked up right now, which is why I don't care that these wires are hanging loose, because I have to pull this out to hook up a camera anyway. And I can even go back and watch my movies.
Setup, I set it up. I set the whole thing up to make it look like.
Alright, but the problem is if I were to turn this off and turn it back on, it's no longer going to work as a signal ground, because they got smart. People were doing this in a permanent setup, and they realized they had to do something to keep people from just doing a simple one-time bypass. So now if it tries to read the USB again, it won't play the video. I would have to pull it out and put it back in. Well, that's a bit of a pain in the butt, and I suppose if you want to do that you could, but it's a little easier to put a switch on it. So if we look at our wiring diagram, See, the yellow and blue wire goes to the parking brake. And the idea is that when the parking brake is put on, it's getting a signal so it knows that it's currently operating and it'll allow you to use it. But if it's continuously on, then it won't allow you to use it. So it has to be parking brake off, parking brake on, which means it has to be signal ground on, signal ground off, signal ground on. You can easily get by this by using a switch. It has to be a continuous switch if you're using a momentary switch, and a momentary switch, if you don't know, means that it only works while you're pressing it or holding it. So if this were a momentary switch, it would only work while I'm holding this down. Continuous switch means connection made, connection disconnected. Same thing here, connection made, connection disconnected. So basically on and off position. Easiest if you're not familiar with wiring to use a two-prong connection, because all this is doing is there's a connection that goes from here to here, so it continues the connection. If it's in the off position, it breaks connection. If it's in the on position, it continues the connection. Same thing with a push button. On, off, two connections. Same thing with an old ignition, because I just went through my old wiring box and chose out what I thought would work, and any of these will work. So if I've got my ignition in there, I can just go off and on, and that would make the connection. A bit bigger than I want to use, and it's also got a coil in there too, so I don't really want to use this. It would look a little cool, but this is only going to be temporary for a couple of days. So I decided to go with, let's see, just a little push button I had laying around. And one end of it, I took an old wire I had laying around and I connected it in, and I needed something to keep it into the OBDII, so I have that. And all this is just a little connector, and this usually goes underneath the screw to create a ground or to create a constant power. And I just secured that on the end of this wire, and I clipped half of it off so that it would only go into one connection. Then what I'm going to do with the yellow wire, since I have one connection here, is I'll connect the yellow and blue wire on the other side, and then whenever I want to use my stereo, I turn it off, turn it on, it's fine. Shut the car off, turn it back on, turn this off, turn it back on, and it should be fine. And you can go a little bit simpler with it too. You can also just use a standard alligator clip, whatever you have lying around. Basically, I just didn't want to spend any money doing this, since I just spent $400 on a stereo with all the accessories. So let's see how that works. Ignore that thing. All right. Okay, so we've got our yellow and blue wire, and I'm going to set you right here so hopefully you can see okay. And I've already got my lead wire connected, so all I need to do is just wrap this around here. And you can use a better connector, I was going to, but again, this is just temporary, so I'm just going to go ahead and screw the wire directly on there. And hopefully you guys can see this okay. And we're just going to screw that down. There we go. And now I have an easy to connect pin, which just, and I'm going to put this the other way because there's no metal connection next to it. Just slide that right in. And then we'll start the vehicle. Oh, wherever I put my keys. These are always helpful. Okay. So now, we start the vehicle. If the switch is in the on position, well, actually either way we'll have to press it because it needs to see that it's been disconnected and reconnected. So it shouldn't work right off the bat. Yep. For your safety, this function is only available when the vehicle is parked. So I've got my switch here, and I press my switch. Now it's in the off position. Press it again.
Interviewing all morning.
Oh yeah? Well, it's not going to be this moron.
Oh, my vehicle froze up, so let's go into settings and do that. There we go. So push button, and it's all activated. push button,
You know what, you put a lock on
deactivated.
that moron shit.
Activated,
What's your problem? Why you give me so
deactivated.
damn
So you can see
serious?
now if I were to press
Somebody
information,
in the streets,
nothing,
not
camera,
staging
nothing,
crime
Bluetooth,
scene.
nothing,
Somebody could've got hurt out
nothing,
there.
nothing,
Like
nothing.
me.
Let me mute this.
Work, somebody got-
So now if I press the button, boom, now I have access. I can go into my information, I can go into my volume controls, and I can go into my Bluetooth settings and everything else I want to access. So it's not pretty, but it works. Again, all we've got is our yellow and blue wire coming down, going to a switch. It's just a constant switch, or you can call it interrupter switch, whatever you like. And then we have a secondary wire with a connector pin feeding into pin number 5. Is that 4 or 5? Well, 4 and 5 are both signal ground, so it shouldn't matter either one you do. And let's just check that theory. Okay. Yep. 4 or 5 will work just fine. I thought I was in 5, but perhaps I wasn't. But either way, those two are signal ground. Do not try to connect here. Okay, that's a 12 volt power, and I don't want you to short out and fry your computer. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and say this video is for informational purposes only. Do not do anything you see in this video. Do not try to recreate it. I am not responsible for any damage to your vehicle. Hope you enjoyed and hope this answered any questions you might have had.